مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. كذلك الله ربي. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقال. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سبحان الله. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل. اللهم صل على
Let's recite Dua Imam Zamana all together. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك توعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. صلوات.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سورة الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآله الطاهرين. اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء وبقوتك التي قهرت بها كل شيء وخضع لها كل شيء وذل لها كل شيء وبجبروتك التي غلبت بها كل شيء وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء. يا نور يا قدوس يا نور يا قدوس يا نور يا قدوس يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تهتك العصام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النقام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تقطع الرجاء. اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب أذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك وأستشفع بك إلى نفسك وأسألك بجودك وكرمك أن تدنيني من قربك وأن تزعني شكرك وأن تلهمني ذكرك. اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خاضع متذلل خاشع أن تسامحني وترحمني وتجعلني بقسمك راضيا قانعا وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا. اللهم وأسألك سؤال من اشتدت فاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجته وعظم فيما عندك رغبته. اللهم عظم سلطانك وعلى مكانك وخفي مكرك وظهر أمرك وغلب قهرك وجرت قدرتك ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك. اللهم لا أجد لذنوبي غافرا ولا لقبائحي ساترا ولا لشيء من عملي القبيح بالحسن مبدلا غيرك. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك. ظلمت نفسي ظلمت نفسي ظلمت نفسي وتجرأت بجهلي وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك لي ومنك علي. اللهم مولاي كم من قبيح سترته وكم من فادح من البلاء أقلته وكم من عثار وقيته وكم من مكروه دفعته وكم من ثناء جميل لست أهلا له نشرته. اللهم عظم بلائي وأفرط بي سوء حالي وقصرت بي أعمالي وقعدت بي أغلالي وحبسني عن نفع بعد آمالي وخدعتني الدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بخيانتها ومطالي. يا سيدي فأسألك بعزتك أن لا يحجب عنك دعائي سوء عملي وفعالي ولا تفضحني بخفي ما اطلعت عليه من سري ولا تعاجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملته في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وإساءتي ودوام تفريطي وجهالتي وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي. وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في الأحوال كلها رؤوفا وعلي في جميع الأمور عطوفا. إلهي وربي من لي غيرك إلهي وربي من لي غيرك أسأله كشف ضري والنظر في أمري. إلهي ومولاي أجريت علي حكما اتبعت فيه هوى نفسي ولم أحترس فيه من تزيين عدوي فغرني بما أهوى وأسعده على ذلك القضاء فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعد حدودك وخالفت بعض أوامرك فلك الحجة علي في جميع ذلك ولا حجة لي فيما جرى علي فيه قضاؤك وألزمني فيه حكمك وبلاؤك. وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيلا مستغفرا منيبا مقرا مذعنا معترفا. لا أجد مفرا مما كان مني ولا مفسعا أتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري وإدخالك إياي في سعة من رحمتك. اللهم فاقبل عذري وارحم شدة ضري وفكني من شد وثاقي. يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني ورقة جلدي ودقة عظمي. يا من بدأ خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتغذيتي هبني لابتداء كرمك والسالف برك بي. يا إلهي وسيدي وربي أتراك معذبي بنارك بعد توحيدك وبعد ما انطوى عليه قلبي من معرفتك ولهج به لساني من ذكرك واعتقده ضميري من حبك وبعد صدق اعترافي ودعائي خاضعا لربوبيتك. هيهات أنت أكرم من أن تضيع من ربيته، أو تبعد من أدنيته، أو تشرد من آويته، أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمته. وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي، أتسلط النار على وجوه خرت لعظمتك ساجدة، وعلى ألسن نطقت بتوحيدك صادقة، وبشكرك مادحة، وعلى قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محققة، وعلى ضمائر حوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعة، وعلى جوارح سعت إلى أوطان تعبدك طائعة، وأشارت باستغفارك مذعنة. ما هكذا الظن بك، ولا أخبرنا بفضلك عنك. يا كريم يا رب، يا كريم يا رب، يا كريم يا رب. وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها، وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها، على أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه، قليل مكثوه، يسير بقاؤه، قصير مدته. فكيف احتمالي لبلاء الآخرة وجليل وقوع المكاره فيها، وهو بلاء تطول مدته ويدوم مقامه، ولا يخفف عن أهله، لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك، وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض. يا سيدي، فكيف بي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الذليل الحقير المسكين المستكين؟ يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي، لأي الأمور إليك أشكو، ولما منها أضج وأبكي؟ لأليم العذاب وشدتي، أم لطول البلاء ومدتي؟ فلئن صيرتني للعقوبات مع أعدائك، وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك، وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك، فهبني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي. صبرت على عذابك، فكيف أصبر على فراقك؟ وهبني صبرت على حر نارك، فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك؟ أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجاء عفوك؟ فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا، لئن تركتني ناطقا لأضجن إليك بين أهلها ضجيج الآمنين، ولأصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين، ولأبكين عليك بكاء الفاقدين، ولأنادينك أين كنت يا ولي المؤمنين، يا غاية آمال العارفين، يا غياث المستغيثين، يا غياث المستغيثين، يا غياث
يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين ويا إله العالمين، أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي فبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفة، وذاق طعم عذابها بمعصية، وحبس بين أطباقها بجرمه وجريرته، وهو يضج إليك ضجيج مؤمل لرحمتك، ويناديك بلسان أهل توحيدك، ويتوسل إليك بربوبيتك، يا مولاي فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من حلمك؟ أم كيف تؤلمه النار وهو يأمل فضلك ورحمتك؟ أم كيف يحرقه لهيبا وأنت تسمع صوته وترى مكانه؟ أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفير وأنت تعلم ضعفه؟ أم كيف يتغلغل بين أطباقه وأنت تعلم صدقه؟ أم كيف تزجره زبانيته وهو يناديك يا رب؟ أم كيف يرجو فضلك في عتقه منها فتتركه فيها أيات؟ ما ذلك الظن بك ولا المعروف من فضلك ولا مشبه لما عاملت به الموحدين من برك وإحسانك. فباليقين أغطع لولا ما حكمت به من تعذيب جاحديك وقضيت به من إخلاد مقانديك لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما وما كان لأحد فيها مقرا ولا مقاما لكنك تقدست أسماؤك أقسمت أن تملأها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين وأن تخلد فيها المقاندين وأنت جل ثناؤك قلت مبتدئا وتطولت بالإنعام متكرما أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون. إلهي وسيدي فأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها وبالقضية التي حتمتها وحكمتها وغلمت من عليه أجريتها أن تهب لي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه الساعة كل جرم أجرمته وكل ذنب أذنبته وكل قبيح أسررته وكل جهل عملته كتمته وأعلنته أخفيته وأظهرته وكل سيئة أمرت بإثباتها الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني وجعلتهم شهودا علي مع جوارحي وكنت أنت الرقيب علي من ورائهم والشاهد لما خفي عنهم وبرحمتك أخفيت وبفضلك سترت وأن توفر حظي من كل خير أنزلت أو إحسان فضلت أو بر نشرت أو رزق بسطت أو ذنب تغفر أو خطأ تستر يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك رقي، يا من بيده ناصيتي، يا عليما بضري ومسكنتي، يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي، يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا ربي، أسألك بحقك وقدسك وأعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي من الليل والنهار بذكرك معمورا وبخدمتك موصولا، وأعمالي عندك مقبولا، حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها وردا واحدا، وحالي في خدمتك سرمدا. يا سيدي يا من عليه محولي، يا من إليه شكوت أحوالي، يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي قو على خدمتك جوارحي، واشدد على العزيمة جوانحي، وهب لي الجد في خشيتك والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك، حتى أسرح إليك في ميادين السابقين، وأسرع إليك في البارزين، وأشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين، وأدنو منك دنو المخلصين، وأخافك مخافة الموقنين، وأجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين. اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فأرد، ومن كادني فكيد، واجعل لي من أحسن عبيدك نصيبا عندك، وأقربهم منزلة منك، وأخصهم زلفة لديك، فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك، وجد لي بجودك، وعطف علي بمجدك، واحفظني برحمتك، واجعل لساني بذكرك لجاء، وقلبي بحبك متيما، ومن علي بحسن إجابتك، وأقلني عثرتي، واغفر زلتي، فإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك، وأمرتهم بدعائك، وضمنت لهم الإجابة، فإليك يا ربي نصبت وجهي، وإليك يا ربي مددت يدي، فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي، وبلغني مناي، ولا تقطع من فضلك رجائي، واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي، يا سريع الرضا يا سريع يا سريع الرضا اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء فإنك فعال لما تشاء يا من اسمه دواء وذكره شفاء وطاعته غناء ارحم من رأس مال الرجاء وسلاحه البكاء يا سابغ النعم يا دافع النقام يا نور المستوحشين في الظلام يا عالما لا يعلم صل على محمد وآل محمد وافعل بما أنت له وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله وسلم تسليما كثيرا.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This week also, before we begin, just some points on the issue that we have at hand, the Palestinian issue. This will take away from our class time a little bit, but we have no choice. We have to speak about this, inshallah. So it's been a very dark week, obviously. A very, very, very dark one that I don't remember the last time that things were this bad. And so in all of this, I just wanted to point out a little bit of a silver lining, if you may. A very thin, obviously, silver lining in all of what's happening. And that is that in this day and age, things are not the same as they were maybe 10 years ago. Yeah? Let alone 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. In this day and age, whatever anyone does or says is put out there for the world to see. And so, in a sense, things have gotten easier. Now, I want to draw a comparison. This is not it's just from one angle that I want to draw this comparison. That the zulm and oppression that happened in Karbala was so great, on one hand. But on the other hand, there was no media back then. Unless the enemy themselves gives you a platform. And so they took Lady Zainab, they took Imam Sajjad to Kufa. They took them to Sham, and they made the mistake of letting them speak. And so they were able to expose things. And we see the fruits of that till today. As I said, this is just silver lining. There's nothing to be happy about, obviously. But in these past 10 years, things have gotten so, and I would say even the last 2-3 years even more than that, things are so out there now, on one hand. On the other hand, the dhulm has become so much and so unavoidable to the point no one can not see it. Or what they see cannot be unseen. So the more dhulm, the more exposure. And the more the brothers and sisters are able to do a Zainabi type of thing where they expose more and more. It's become very easy. Every person with a phone, every person with an account now is able to do their part. So when you look at what the comments are under these posts and videos and all of that, it really stands out. It wasn't like this before. It was not like this before. Before, people were sheep, and maybe you couldn't blame them because the media wasn't as strong. Media was only what the main media outlets would share of information. Nowadays, it's not about that. Every person is a medium for getting information across to the people. So when you read the comments, you are blown away at how much support there is now for the oppressed people of the occupied lands. Yeah? It wasn't like this before, alhamdulillah. So they are going down this rabbit hole. Now, they were going to have an invasion, and they've put it off because of rain, they said. You know what's really happening. They're really stuck in what they've gotten themselves into. But at the same time, I do want to say that you still are shocked to see, after all of the exposure, you're shocked to see that there are still a lot of people out there who are being fooled still. Now, I don't know. In the past, maybe there was excuses. In this day and age, I don't know what the excuse is anymore. You just get the feeling that some of these people who just don't see things the way they really are, it just seems that they live comfortable lives. They've never been exposed to hardship. They don't know what it means for electricity to go out for 3 hours on a hot summer day. Yeah? They don't know what it means to skip a meal or two. Why? Because there's nothing on the shelves. And we saw what happened when COVID hit. When COVID hit, people showed their true colors and how ready they are to make sacrifices for others. No. For God's sake, people of the world were laughing at us because we were struggling with toilet paper, for God's sake. You know? So it seems that a lot of the people out there, they just don't know what suffering means. They can't relate when they see something like this happening. And so they look for an easy way out. They'll just say, oh, okay, yeah, this one provoked. This one started it. This and that. Finished. We're good now. We're good. Oh, babies were killed on this side too, so babies can be killed on that. Oh, we're good. Let's go on. Let's get on with our lives. Let's close our eyes and not look. That's what it looks like. It's as if it's like a video game. It's not reality. Yeah, it's all going to finish. And so these people of the occupied lands have become, it seems, a means of the fitna and tests for the people of the world now. It's not about Muslims anymore. Sometimes the Quran will say, أَحَسِبَ النَّاسِ أَن يُتْرَكُوا أَن يَقُولُوا آمَنَّا بِاللَّهِ وَهُمْ لَا يُفْتَنُونَ. That, oh, do the believers think that we're going to let them go and they say we believe and we won't send a fitna their way, a test their way? Yeah? Verses like these talk to the mu'mineen, but it seems now that Allah says, okay, people, you're not all Muslim, that's fine. I want to see how much humanity you have in you. أَحَسِبَ النَّاسِ, do the people think that we're going to let them go without testing them? The people of Gaza right now, they are a means of a fitna for the rest, because fitna literally means test, right? And so it reminds me of what Imam Ali said in Nahj al-Balagha, where he says, لَتُغَرْبَلُنَّ غَرْبَلَةً. You will be sifted through, O people. Don't think that you just sit there 10 years ago, 15 years ago is going to be the same as now. No. The tests are going to become clearer and clearer. Yeah? In the beginning, let's go back to Imam Ali's time. Battle of Jamal, Siffin, things were unclear for a lot of people. But then it reached Karbala. Like, come on. Karbala, it's clear, man. Here also, okay, 40, 50, 60, 70 years ago. By the way, we don't know what happened 60, 50, 70 years ago. We don't know, okay? We think now it's gotten bad. It was bad back then too. We just don't know. We haven't seen. There's no imagery. Barely any imagery. The stories, though, are horrific. You know how you can tell it was very bad 60, 70 years ago? I don't know if you've all seen this video. You probably have, some of you, of this general. He's speaking to this Israeli general. He's speaking to some of the soldiers, and he's saying, kill them all. Kill them all, babies, women. He says it, like directly he says it. Explicitly he says it. He says, if you have neighbors that are Arab, now's the time to go shoot them. He's telling this to the soldiers. Like, you think people in the settlers in the West Bank, they hear this, they're going to just sit and do nothing? And that's why we're seeing, I think it's above 60 now, last I checked, 60 people have been killed in the West Bank. Forget about Gaza. In the West Bank, over 60 people have been killed because of hate crimes. Yeah. We don't know what happened in the past. This guy who's in, according to that clip that I saw, is in his 90s, and he's saying something like this. He's like a retired general. I wonder what he was doing 40, 50 years ago when he had the gun in his hand. So we don't know. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that people didn't know. Okay, fine, things are blurry. Now things are becoming clearer and clearer. But of course, at what expense? At the expense of a people being a means of fitna for others. We have verses of the Quran that say this, that sometimes the people will be a fitna for others, a test for others. And the mu'mineen who become the test for others, they know how hard it's going to be for them. And so they do dua, oh Allah, don't make us a fitna for others, because we know it's going to be hard. I'm going to read the verses for you. It says, وَجَعَلْنَا بَعْضَكُمْ لِبَعْضٍ فِتْنَةً أَتَصْبِرُونَ. We made some of you a fitna for others, a means of a test for others. They're going to do dhulm to them. So that we see, are you going to have patience or not? This is the deal, unfortunately. This is how the world works. They with their free will choose to be the ones who are doing the dhulm. And then so other verses elsewhere. فَقَالُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ تَوَكَّلْنَا. Now ironically, this verse is talking about Bani Israel and the times of Musa. قَالُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ تَوَكَّلْنَا. We rely on Allah. رَبَّنَا لَا تَجْعَلْنَا فِتْنَةً لِلْقَوْمِ الظَّالِمِينَ. Oh Allah, don't make us a fitna, a test for the zalimeen. Because it's going to be hard on us. Fir'aun committed genocide. Which in parentheses I will say that he committed genocide. Allah didn't do anything to him. When the time came, he did something. Allah allows them to do whatever they want. The Quran says, don't think that when we give them time, أَنَّمَا نُمْلِ لَهُمْ خَيْرٌ. That when we give them time, when we give them opportunity and respite, that's good, something good for them. No. لِيَزْدَادُوا إِثْمًا. So they can do whatever they can of evil and go down even more. So these people know, لا تجعلنا فتنة للقوم الظالمين. Another verse somewhere else, ربنا, this is during Ibrahim's time and his followers, لا تجعلنا فتنة للذين كفروا. Don't make us a fitna, because it's going to be painful. There's going to be suffering, and that's what it is right now. This is a very thin silver lining. But at the end of the day, when the brothers and sisters out there clench their fists in these rallies and they're voicing their objection to the tyranny that's happening, they should also remember that these oppressed people, they'll have their day. Their day will come. Yeah, so we shouldn't feel helpless that, oh, there's nothing that's being done. No, they're fighting back. They're fighting back with what? With their sabr. Because this will be a means of the adab of akhirah for the zalimeen. And so it also, another silver lining I would say is that you find the same obsolete, outdated arguments being presented from the opposition. The same old stuff, which shows that there is nothing new here. As a result, the people of the world have no excuse to fall for the same old stuff. Things like, I was surprised. This one was kind of new, actually. The rest I'm going to mention are old ones, but this one's kind of new. I was like, really? Who's going to fall for this one? The guy is saying, oh, the occupation is afraid of ethnic cleansing because they've been through it themselves during World War II. They're afraid of ethnic cleansing because they've seen it themselves. How could they do it to others? Come on. Arguments like, obsolete ones like, it's Arabs versus Jews. Come on, like, who's going to fall for that anymore? Oh, they have the right to defend themselves. Disproportionate retaliation is the only way. You guys saw that, you saw the interview with Piers Morgan and Bassem Youssef, his name, right? He showed one paper, the guy couldn't answer anymore. It's like, okay, disproportionate is the way to go. 10 years, let's go look back, 10, 15, 20, I don't know how many years. All of them have been disproportionate. Has it given the desired result and answer? It hasn't. So is that the way to go? Apparently not. Obsolete arguments. But do you condemn the resistance? Things like that. The army of the occupiers is the most moral army ever. Like, the bigger the lie, we have a saying in Farsi, the bigger the lie, the easier it is to accept it. Okay, and this is exactly what we're seeing here. So things have become clearer and clearer and clearer. And the people of the world are being sifted through now. Yeah. And so us, sitting here, everyone's doing their part, alhamdulillah. It's really something different this time around. But we're still waiting on the Arab leaders. Okay? We're still waiting on those ones who have the means, the ones who have borders with the occupied lands, but still haven't opened them. And you would feel like they're the actual enemies of the Palestinian people. The way they talk about how we're not going to open our borders. All right, we'll see, inshallah. That day will come. Which day will come? The day will come where Allah says in the Quran, وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ اللَّهَ غَافِلًا عَمَّا يَعْمَلُ الظَّالِمُونَ إِنَّمَا يُؤَخِّرُهُمْ لِيَوْمٍ تَشْخَصُ فِيهِ الْأَبْصَارِ, which sends shivers down one's spine, this verse. That do not suppose that Allah is unaware of what the oppressors do. He is only granting them respite until the day when the eyes will stare in terror, scrambling with their heads upturned on the day of judgment. There will be a fixed gaze in their eyes and their hearts will be vacant. You know, I don't know, we say something in Farsi, I don't know if we have it in English, when like all of a sudden you feel like your stomach went empty because you get scared of something. Yeah, your heart drops or skips a beat, something like that. That's what the verse is saying. Their hearts will be vacant. It's talking about something like that. Yeah. And so if they are going to be the means of the fitna of the people of the world, unfortunately, you can see this in the eyes of the oppressed people. You can see it in their words that they are being patient. You know, it's interesting. I listened to an audio clip of a mother in those lands, and she's telling her son, she says, guess what? We are actually the means of hope for the people that are outside of Gaza. The people of the world are watching, and they're gaining morale and spirit from watching what's happening. Them inside, we're feeling sorry for them. They're feeling sorry for us. And they're saying, don't worry, it's going to be fine. Yeah. And so this reminds me, and I'll end with this. It reminds me of this verse that in about Prophet Nuh's time. Prophet Nuh is very madloom. They would beat him up every time. They would make fun of him and beat him up. We just hear the part of the story where he was building the ark. Nuh would get attacked by his people. Yeah, it wasn't just them making fun of him. According to the narrations we have and the accounts we have, it says, وَاتْلُ عَلَيْهِمْ نَبَأَ نُوحٍ إِذْ قَالَ لِقَوْمِهِ يَا قَوْمِ إِنْ كَانَ كَبُرَ عَلَيْكُمْ مَقَامِي وَتَذْكِيرِي بِآيَاتِ اللَّهِ فَعَلَى اللَّهِ تَوَكَّلْتُ فَأَجْمِعُوا أَمْرَكُمْ وَشُرَكَاءَكُمْ ثُمَّ لَا يَكُنْ أَمْرُكُمْ عَلَيْكُمْ غُمَّةً ثُمَّ اقْضُوا إِلَيَّ وَلَا تُنْظِرُونَ. Basically, I'll read the translation in a second, but basically, when Nuh sees that he's going to be the means of the test of the people, he says, do whatever you can against me and attack me from every angle and don't spare me at all. Do whatever you want to and do whatever you can, and I'm going to just rely on Allah and see what Allah has in store for me and planned for me. That, I would say, is echoing what the people of the oppressed people of the occupied lands right now is what they're saying. What's the translation? Relate to them the account of Nuh when he said to his people, O my people, if my stay among you is hard on you, you don't like it, and also my reminding you of Allah's signs is too much for you to handle, for my part, I have put my trust in Allah. So conspire together, along with your partners, leaving nothing vague in your plan. Figure everything out. Then carry it out against me without giving me any chance, any respite whatsoever. فَأَجْمِعُوا أَمْرَكُمْ وَشُرَكَاءَكُمْ ثُمَّ اقْضُوا إِلَيَّ وَلَا تُنْظِرُونَ. Don't give me a chance to get away. Give me all you've got. That's exactly what we see what's happening here. It falls under the same category, in my very humble opinion. And of course, we know that in the end of the stories of all these prophets, what happened. So we will hang in there as much as we can, do whatever we can within our power to expose the lies, to let our voices be heard. Inshallah, the brothers and sisters are doing a wonderful job across the globe, and it won't get to us, and we won't take it to heart that there are a lot of sheep out there still that are closing their eyes, choosing to close their eyes and not see the reality and truth. We pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does whatever He's supposed to do, inshallah, so that the Palestinian people are freed from all the hardship and suffering that they're undergoing, and Allah gives them sabr in all of this, and at least a very, very beautiful akhirah as a result of what they're going through, inshallah. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. We were speaking about non-fiqhi matters, and if we have hadiths that speak about these non-fiqhi matters, khabar wahid that is not mutawatir that speaks about non-fiqhi matters, can we follow, are we supposed to follow these khabar wahids or not? We were going through the different viewpoints in regards to this matter. So for today we want to go through Shaykh al-Ansari's views. We probably won't get to Allama Tabatabai, we'll leave that for next session. Tabatabai is going to be a very important one. Shaykh al-Ansari here, Shaykh al-Ansari, let me just give you a little brief explanation about how great he is. We have two shaykhs, okay? When it comes to Shi'i thought, when it comes to all of Shi'i topics and disciplines, Shaykh al-Tusi is like the father, one of the fathers of Shi'ism. Then you come closer to maybe, I always forget the dates, but maybe 100, 150 years ago, you will have another the Shaykh, okay? And he's referred to as Shaykh al-A'zam, the grand and great Shaykh. Who is he? Shaykh al-Ansari, the one we want to talk about right now. So, inshallah, when we get the chance, after we go through Ijtihad a little bit, when we get to the different eras of Ijtihad, and those pivotal, I would say, moments throughout this timeline of those formative periods. One of those formative periods towards the end of the timeline as we get closer to the 21st century is going to be the period of Shaykh al-Ansari. Huge, huge. And so one might even argue till today we are still in his school of thought, kind of. But he's mostly, of course, fiqh and usul. He's not all disciplines like Shaykh al-Tusi. So he's that great of an individual. And so if anyone's going to say anything when it comes to these matters, it's good to see what he says as well. Shaykh al-Ansari, he's pretty clear about this whole thing. If, for example, Shaykh al-Tusi, we said that it sounds like he is talking about those basic aqa'id that we're not supposed to follow khabar wahid in, so it's irrelevant to our discussion. I've discussed this before, so I don't want to repeat what I mean by it. If Akhund Khurasani might be talking about a special Babul Insidad when it comes to these things, and so on and so forth, here Shaykh Ansari is very clear. Shaykh al-Ansari is very clear about this. He says, look, I want to talk about that which becomes wajib to believe in if one gains yaqeen in it. So, what do you mean by that, Shaykh Ansari? He says, look, if I gain yaqeen that the sirat on the Day of Judgment is going to be like this, if I gain yaqeen that in the barzakh this is going to happen, that's going to happen. These are details we don't have to have yaqeen in. Okay? But if we actually reach yaqeen in them, then we have to believe in it then. For example, if Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam tells me, in the barzakh this happens, okay, I have yaqeen now. So that means I have to have yaqeen in it. I have to believe in it. But sometimes, as we said before, again and again and again, it's not Imam al-Sadiq that told me. It's a khabar wahid through 5 or 6 links that reached me that Imam Sadiq said this. Okay, here all we have is dhann. We don't have yaqeen anymore. But if I was to gain yaqeen in this, then I have to accept it, correct? Just like how if the Quran says something, I accept it. If Imam al-Sadiq tells me something, I have to accept it. If that which I have to accept, if I have yaqeen in it, reaches me through khabar wahid, and as a result, I no longer have yaqeen in it, but I have dhann in it, oh Shaykh al-Ansari, what am I supposed to do? He says the stronger view, right? And once again, you can look at your slides, is that it isn't wajib to act upon the dhann that one gains through khabar wahid. So we see, Shaykh al-Ansari is of that school. He says, no, khabar wahid, it's not wajib to take what it says in non-fiqhi matters. Assuming it is gained, assuming I gained dhann through khabar wahid regarding a non-fiqhi matter, for example, what happens in barzakh, assuming that that dhan is gained, I don't have to act upon it. And that is wajib, and that it is wajib to do tawaqquf. Not only is it not wajib to you for you to follow what the khabar wahid told you and accept it, but it's wajib for you to do tawaqquf and say, I'm not sure. I have a dhan here because there's a khabar wahid here or a khabar wahid there. But since I'm not 100% sure, since I don't have yaqeen, Imam Sadiq didn't tell me. 5 people told me that so-and-so told them that so-and-so told them that Imam Sadiq said this. So it's different. I only have dhan. Because I have dhan, I have to do tawaqquf. Practically, tawaqquf, meaning what? Meaning I stop. And I say, I'm not sure. Yeah, there is a khabar wahid that says this, people, but I'm not 100% sure, so I can't go by it. That's what he's saying. Tawaqquf means to not have an opinion. Yes? Tawaqquf means to do ihtiyat. You stop. In this case, I do ihtiyat. What does ihtiyat mean? It means that I don't have an opinion here. And I'm going to just refrain from saying something or attributing something to Islam that I'm not 100% sure about. In fiqh matters, to do ihtiyat means to do, to do some things, to do everything that will get you 100% sure that you did what you were supposed to do. So for example, I don't know if, I'm not sure if lobster is haram or not. Go back to lobster again. I'm not sure if lobster is haram or not. Okay, well, what does ihtiyat dictate to do? In this case, to stay away from it. Because either it's halal or it's haram. If it's halal, I didn't have it anyway. Whatever, it's not wajib for me to eat it. If it's haram, then I stayed away from it, and I'm sure I did what I needed to do. So in this case, ihtiyat is to stay away from lobster, avoid eating it, because I'm not sure, okay? But this isn't practical issues. Don't get me wrong. Even in practical issues, sometimes you can't do ihtiyat. For example, this is an example they'll use. It is wajib to save someone's life that I'm supposed to save the life of, but they're drowning and they are non-mahram to me. So it's haram to make physical contact with a non-mahram. It's either wajib to save this person now or it's haram to save this person now. Which one do I do? This is called tazahum. We might talk about this later, maybe. In these cases, the marajah say you take the one that's more important. You can't do ihtiyat here anymore. You have to choose a side. The more important one would be to save the person's life. Okay? For example, this is an easy example that everyone would know the answer to. Usually, though, in practical matters, it's easy to do ihtiyat. We know what we're supposed to do. Is 1 tasbihat arba'a wajib or 3? In salat, for example. Okay, I'll take the safe route and do 3. If one was wajib, I've done extra. If 3 is wajib, I've done my duty. In non-fiqhi matters, there's a hadith that says that in the barzakh, for example, this happens. Okay, khabar wahid told me this. 80% sure now, 70% sure now. But it's not 100%. So I can't say it's going to happen. I can't believe it's going to happen. What am I supposed to do then? Shaykh Ansari says, do tawaqquf. Do ihtiyat. What's the ihtiyat in this matter? To say, I'm not sure what it is, so I'm not going to adopt this view as Islam. Okay? And what you can do is what the likes of Akhun Khurasani and the likes of Muhaqqiq Iraqi said, to just say, I believe in whatever is the reality of the matter. I'm not 100% sure, but whatever the reality of the matter is. Is that clear? That's what ihtiyat does. In these cases, minimalist approach. In non-fiqhi matters of aqeedah, matters of belief, it's a minimalist approach, yeah. I'm not 100% sure this is something that Islam says. I have 80% certainty, then you're not allowed to say that it's Islam. Because لا يغني من إن الظن لا يغني من الحق شيئا. The Quran says, even if you have 80% certainty about something, it does not suffice for the reality. For 100% certainty, it's not. You can only attribute to Islam and believe something to be Islam if you have 100% certainty in it. That's what Shaykh Ansari is saying. That's what others say. But the likes of Ayatollah Khou'i, and later on we'll see Ayatollah Ma'rifat has the same view, they say other things too. They'll say, no, we can. Even though 80%, we can. And even Shaykh Ansari in a minute is going to say something else. This is the thing about Shaykh Ansari. Let me say this. Shaykh Ansari was really cool. When you would study him, because his textbooks for 3-4 years in the Hawza, at least in the main Iranian Hawza that we had, I don't know about the foreigners Hawza. I don't know if they study, how much of that they study. I think they do. But for 3-4 years, you're studying Shaykh Ansari. This is what he does to you. He will prove a point for pages. And then you're like, okay, yeah, you're right. I agree with you. And then he's like, Allahumma illa ayyuqal. Unless we say this. And then he destroys everything. Okay? So now Shaykh Ansari, right now, this is his first view. We'll see what we'll get later. But for now, he says the stronger view, and I've underlined that for a reason. I've underlined it because later on, he's going to have another ihtimal and possibility as well. So he says, it is wajib for us to do tawaqquf, to do ihtiyat here, and not ascribe something to Islam. Not put it in stone. Okay? Now, Shaykh Ansari, what would you say if I would to come to you in your qabr in Najaf right now and tell you that there are people that they ascribe stuff to the religion that are not even khabar wahid thiqa that check the boxes. They just saw it in some random book somewhere. Shaykh Ansari, what would you do if I tell you that, man? Okay? He says, why do we have to do tawaqquf? He says we have to do tawaqquf because of the high number of hadiths forbidding us to say anything without certainty and commanding us to practice tawaqquf in those matters. The exception was khabar wahid in fiqhi matters. In non-fiqhi matters, the exception doesn't apply. The rule is there. You cannot say anything that you don't have certainty in. And so he goes on to corroborate this more. He says, our martyred Shaykh, Al-Shahid Al-Thani, has said in Al-Maqasid Al-Aliyah, I think it's a book on Salat, after explaining that gaining knowledge of the details of barzakh and resurrection isn't necessary, what does he say? Shahid Thani, which is one of the greatest of all time, obviously. He says, as for that which has reached us from the Prophet through khabar wahid, in regards to barzakh and resurrection and everything else, tafsir, all these other things, history, it absolutely isn't wajib to accept. Even if the chain is a reliable one. Look at that. The reason being that khabar wahid gives dhann. And there's difference of opinion whether or not one can act on it in dhanni legal rulings, let alone dhanni belief-related ones. Look, like Shahid Thani went there. He actually went there. He says, there's difference of opinion whether or not we can follow dhann even in fiqhi matters. Like so far we've been assuming that that's like a given in our discussions over these past few sessions. Shahid Thani, he's like, wait a minute. A person like Sayyid al-Murtada, he says we're not even allowed to follow khabar wahid even in fiqhi matters. Okay? So why are we even having this discussion? Shahid Thani says for non-fiqhi matters. Now, of course, Shahid Thani will follow khabar wahid in fiqhi matters, right? But he's saying, look, it's disputed. Let alone non-fiqhi matters. Obviously, there is no hujjiyah there, he says. There is no authority and bindingness over there when it comes to non-fiqhi matters. Now, once again, I've said this a few times in the past, I'll say it again. Does this mean, for example, Usul al-Kafi, which is 2 volumes, the first 2 volumes of Al-Kafi, the entire book, the first 2 volumes are non-fiqhi matters. Does that mean he wasted his time because we have to put aside khabar wahid regarding non-fiqhi matters? No. These are very valuable and precious hadith. We'll talk about how we can benefit from those. Yes? We can benefit from those. Ayatollah Misbah Yazdi has a very nice point there, and others have a point there, and I also have the same kind of point there. We'll talk about it later, inshallah. Yeah, Ayatollah Misbah, I didn't know he had a view on this actually, but then I came across an article that was from our respected sister Ustada Fatima Megji. She shared this because she found out we're having these discussions. She shared the article. I'll share it with anyone who wants it later. Over there, she points out Ayatollah Misbah's view. I was like, wow, this is something I'm going to use for, inshallah, the time when we want to talk about what we can use these hadiths for when it comes to non-fiqhi matters. It's a very important point. So no one's discarding anything. But we want to have the rules set of how we work with these things. That's what we're talking about. Anyway, so Shaykh Ansari said the stronger view. Then he moved on to quoting Shahid al-Thani the Great. Then he moves on to changing it a little bit here. Not his view, but just saying, look, if anyone does say that I'm going to follow khabar wahid in these, there is an argument for them as well. He says, but if a person gains dhann from such a khabar wahid, it is possible. You see, I've underlined that for a reason. It is possible to say, so over there he said stronger view. Here he says it's possible to say 3 things. there are two things you can't tell this person. Okay, so we have a person. Khabar wahid reaches them regarding something in the barzakh, let's say, regarding the tafsir of a verse, for example. We cannot tell this person two things, but we can tell them one thing. Two things we can't tell this person who has now gained dhann from this khabar wahid. We can't tell them, oh, don't, you're not allowed to gain yaqeen from this. That's not in his hands to begin with. He says, I'm not going to gain yaqeen, I have dhann. This is something that's irrelevant to me. He says we can't tell them they shouldn't gain yaqeen from it. This is impossible because the assumption is they only gained a dhann from it. So this isn't even in their control. That's one thing. Let's put that aside. We can't tell them they shouldn't gain dhann from it either. So they didn't gain yaqeen, and we can't tell them to not gain yaqeen. We can't tell them don't gain dhann either, because they'll say, I have actually and in actuality gained dhann here. You can't tell me don't have dhann here. He says we can't tell them they shouldn't gain dhann from it. This is impossible either because this is also isn't in their control. And the assumption is they have gained it already. The person says, look, a khabar wahid reached me. Okay, I have gained 80% certainty. You can't tell me to erase it. That's something in the heart. Right? It's like telling somebody, don't love this person. Like, I love them. They're good looking. What can I do? It's something in the heart. It's not in my control. I have gained 70% certainty here. But what we can tell them, he says, is this. He says we can tell them it is necessary to adopt what they have gained dhann in as an actual religious teaching. Okay. It's very interesting that Sheikh Ansari says this. Okay. What is he saying before I read on? And Sheikh Ansari, he's saying that I see this as a practical implication. If you remember in our last session, Ayatollah Larijani was explaining Ayatollah Khouyi. He said, I think, if you remember, there was an X and a check mark. If you can pull up the slides from last week, you'll see. There's a practical implication and an intellectual implication we talked about before. Ayatollah Khouyi said there's an intellectual, there's a practical. Ayatollah Larijani said, Ayatollah Khouyi, I think, doesn't believe in the practical implication. What was the practical implication of a khabar wahid that has to do with non-fiqhi matters? The practical implication, according to Ayatollah Khouyi, was that I can share it with others. And that was the example he gave. But can I believe it in it myself? That was the intellectual implication we said. And that's where the difference of opinion lied. Here, Sheikh Ansari is saying, I don't even see the intellectual implication, which is to adopt something that Khabar Wahid tells me, adopt it as a religious actual teaching and an actual belief. He says this is not an intellectual implication, this is a practical implication. This is very important. It changes the equation completely. And this is the first time we're hearing someone say this. That this is also a practical implication. If it's a practical implication, then everyone agrees that Khabar Wahid is Hujjah in it. Because we said, Khabar Wahid is Hujjah in anything that's practical. The intellectual stuff, the stuff that has to do with the heart, that's what it's not Hujjah in. But if actually, when someone tells you, the Khabar Wahid tells you that the barzakh is going to be like this, and it has a reliable chain of narrators, and you gain dhann from it, Sheikh Ansari says, practically, you can say, okay, I'm going to now believe that this is, but you only have 80%. It doesn't matter. I'm going to take this as a Islamic teaching. He says that's possible. And it's a practical implication. And so Khabar Wahid is Hujjah in it. You see, guys, how meticulous things get. How you look at it. This is Ijtihad, brothers and sisters. And then someone sits up there, gives 40 lectures on Ijtihad and Taqlid and says, hey people, everyone can do Ijtihad and Taqlid. Everyone can. Don't worry about what these scholars have done. These scholars have really gone through painstaking and made painstaking efforts and split hairs to figure out the reports that we can follow. Gosh, if only we had access to the Imams, I would be the first one to not go to Sheikh Ansari anymore. Trust me. This is how meticulous things get. All right, let's read on. He says the same way a person who knows, yes. According to him, he says, I can see this as an argument. What's the case? Oh, like 80% certainty. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, he says someone can argue for that. Why? Because this is a practical implication. The moment you take it out of the realm of practical implication and it goes into intellectual / heart type of implication, even Ansari is going to say no. What he's doing here is helping the ones who have another opinion here. He's saying, look, if you want to fix it, this is how you fix it. You make it into a practical one. Diya ad-Din al-Iraqi will say the exact opposite. If you go to the notes we had there, Diya ad-Din al-Iraqi, he says, this is not a practical implication. It has to do with the heart. What do you mean 80% became 100%? It's 80%. But I say there is room, personally. I think there is room for what Shaykh al-Ansari is saying here. I think there is room to see this as a practical implication, to adopt something as an Islamic teaching, although I only have 80% yaqeen in it. But still, once again, there's caveats here, there's conditions here. We have to go through that. Later, inshallah, we'll talk, okay? He says, the same way a person who knows the truth is ordered to embrace it as truth and reality in their heart. So he's dividing, he's making a discernment here. He's discerning between, sometimes there are people who know what the truth is, yet they don't embrace it. And the Quran says, وَجَحَدُوا بِهَا وَاسْتَيْقَنَتْهَا أَنفُسُهُم, that they went against the truth, but they had istayqanatha, they had yaqeen in the truth. So he's saying, look, you can have yaqeen in something and sometimes not embrace it. And sometimes you have yaqeen in it and you can embrace it. We'll do the same thing for dhann now. He says the same way we could do it there, we can separate these two from each other. You can have yaqeen in something but not embrace it. It shows that you can have dhann in something and embrace it at the same time. What's the big deal? He says the Quran speaks of how some people knew the truth yet rejected it. So there is no problem in making it wajib to accept khabar wahid in this way that I just explained. The reason being that this is considered a practical implication. And quote unquote acting upon the khabar that hujjiyah will dictate. Hujjiyah dictates that I act upon it because it has a practical implication. Ayatollah Khouyi, according to Larijani's interpretation of Khouyi, Ayatollah Khouyi said, practical implication, the only one I can find is ikhbarul ghayr, telling others, sharing with others. Can I adopt it myself? He didn't say anything there. Here though, Ansari says, I will bring it to, and so Ansari, I would say, is being more daqiq here. If we take the transcription of Ayatollah Khouyi's transcriptions of his dars, word for word, if that's what he actually said, I think that Shaykh al-Ansari is being more precise here, and I'll explain in our next slide. So in short, Shaykh al-Ansari believes that the stronger argument is that khabar wahid is not hujjah in non-fiqhi matters. True. But it is also possible to say khabar wahid is hujjah. It is a hujjah that bears two things. Number one, an intellectual implication, which is submission, adoption, embracing what the khabar wahid said as Islamic teaching, really. But then you see in parentheses what I wrote, but he believes it to be a practical implication. That's why he's accepting it. So in reality, it's not an intellectual implication. And of course, obviously, a person who believes in that practical implication will obviously believe in the other practical implication, which is attribution to God and Islam. Okay? So note here that what Shaykh Ansari says, if we go to the previous slide, what did he say? He said there's no problem in making it wajib to accept. Ayatollah Khouyi, if you remember last session, what do we say? He says, la mani'a. There's no problem in adopting. It's okay to. That implies it's not wajib. But we said hujjah means it's binding. Ayatollah Khouyi, you can't be on the fence. To say, oh, there's a practical implication, there isn't, but at the same time it's hujjah. What do you mean? If you say it's hujjah, it has to be binding, it has to be wajib. And so Shaykh Ansari doesn't make this fallacy here of mixing these two up. He said, and so that's what the note says. It says what Shaykh Ansari says is more accurate and consistent with hujjiyah, being hujjah, than what Ayatollah Khouyi said. Ayatollah Khouyi said, la mani'a, no problem. No. That's a problem, Ayatollah Khouyi, actually. If it's hujjah, it's wajib for me to adopt it. So Shaykh Ansari says, you can pick a side here. You can pick a side. My stronger view is this, but this side has an argument. Yes? So you tell your family. So if it's hujjah on me personally, can I now tell my family? So either you are a mujtahid yourself or you're not. Okay? If you're a mujtahid, it'll be binding on you and whoever follows your ijtihad. There is no lines here of family, non-family, all of that stuff. We don't have that. Because the dalil that tells us that khabar wahid is hujjah doesn't draw these lines. It says it's either hujjah or it's not. When it's hujjah, that means it's a hujjah on everyone who sees this as hujjah or follows someone who sees it as hujjah. And if you're not a mujtahid, then your family doesn't even have to follow you. Okay? I know you're pushing for the patriarchy here, but the most a person can do is read these hadiths to someone else, and if they gain yaqeen, then so be it. If they gain dhann, then they have dhann, and they have to deal with it as a dhanni thing. Yes. That's a very good question. All right, with that, this is Shaykh al-Ansari now. Now, after this, inshallah, in our next session, we'll move to Tabatabai. It's interesting. Tabatabai is one of the harshest ones against this matter. Okay? He's one of the harshest ones against going to khabar wahid for non-fiqhi matters. And so there's different excerpts that he has. And then also, but I'll point out how, in practice though, in his tafsir of al-Mizan, he will cite a lot of hadiths. And so you're kind of confused what's going on here, but there's an explanation as well there. If there are any other questions, we'll take. If not, we end inshallah. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Salawat. زيارة. السلام عليك يا رسول الله. السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام على الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة. السلام على 9 المعصومين من ولد الحسين. السلام عليك يا مولانا يا صاحب الزمان. الأمان الأمان من فتن الزمان. عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك. السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته.